Hello everyone, welcome back to Vaishaya's YouTube channel. This is Pooja Sharma and I'm back with the next chapter. So before we begin, here are the details of Vaishayas on your screen. You can email us, visit our YouTube channel, and also you can contact on this number for your enrollment details and if you are interested to enroll for our test series, and you can also contact us if you have any doubts relating to UPSC. Let's begin. So today we will be reading about world climate and climate change. So the world climate, it can be studied by organizing information and data on climate and synthesizing them in smaller units for easy understanding and also for description and analysis. So here, as you can see in the picture, there are three methods of climate classification. One is the genetic method and one is the imperial method. So genetic method is based on the causes of the phenomenon, the natural phenomenon that takes place, like air mass and all that. And empirical methods, they will be based on observations using the environmental data which we get. So examples are Koepin's all the classification that he's given. So we'll be reading about that also in detail. So there are three broad approaches and have been adopted for classifying, three broad approaches have been adopted for classifying climate. So they are empirical, genetic and applied. So empirical, as we saw, it's based on observed data, particularly on temperature and precipitation, that is rainfall. And genetic classification, it attempts to organize the climates according to their causes. Then we have applied classification, which is used for special tasks and purposes. Then we have the Koepin's scheme of classification of climate. I'm sorry for my pronunciation. The most widely used classification of climate is the empirical climate classification scheme, which is developed by V. Koepin. So Koepin identified a close relationship between the distribution of vegetation and climate. So we all know that regions vegetation, the type of plants that grow over there, the flora which is over there, it all depends upon the climate on the basis of how much rainfall, sunlight and many other factors. So he selected certain values of temperature and precipitation and related them to the distribution of the vegetation. So you can see temperature and the rainfall related to the distribution of the vegetation, which is nothing but a flora, and use these values for classifying the climates. So it is an empirical classification which is based on the mean annual and mean monthly temperature and precipitation data. So if you all remember, we always read about the mean annual rainfall and all of that. So this is that only. So he introduced the use of capital and small letters to designate the climatic groups and the various types. So although it was developed in 1918 and modified over a period of time, his scheme is still popular and in use. So he recognized 5 major climatic groups. 4 of them are based on temperature and 1 is on precipitation. So as you can see in table 12.1, it will list all the climatic groups and their characteristics according to Koepin, and the capital letters A, C, D, E, they delineate humid climates and B will portray our dry climate. So as you can see in the picture over here, tropical, dry, warm, temperate, cold, snow, forest climates, cold climates and highland. So we'll read about this in detail in the upcoming slides. So the climatic groups are subdivided into types designated by small letters, which are based on the seasonality of precipitation and also the temperature characteristics. And then we have the seasons of dryness, which are indicated by small letters such as F, M, W and S, where F will correspond to no dry season, M will mean monsoon climate, W will be winter dry season, and S obviously it will be for summer dry season. So you can take a screenshot of this. The small letters A, B, C, D refer to the degree of severity of the temperature, the intensity. And the B, dry climate, they are subdivided using the capital letters S for steppe or semi-arid and W for deserts. So the climatic types are over here in table 12.2, and The distribution of the climatic groups and types is shown in table 12.1. So as you can see over here, this is how the classification is done. Different types. You don't have to by heart all of them. You just need to know that in which region what type of climate is present. And vegetation, of course. So we start with the tropical humid climates. So these tropical humid climates, they exist between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. So the sun being overhead throughout the year and the presence of the intertropical convergence zone make the climate very hot and humid. So the annual range of temperature is very low and the annual rainfall is high. So the tropical group is divided into three types, which is we have the tropical wet climate, which is denoted by AF. Then we have tropical monsoon climate, which is denoted as AM. And then we have the tropical wet and dry climate, which will be denoted as or called as AW. So the tropical wet climate, which is our AF, it is found near the equator. And the major areas are the Amazon basins in South America, Western Equatorial Africa and islands of East Indies. Then significant amount of rainfall occurs in every month of the year, and also there will be thunder showers in the afternoon. So the temperature is uniformly high and the annual range of temperature will be negligible, and the maximum temperature on any day is around 30 degrees Celsius while the minimum temperature is around 20 degrees Celsius. So the tropical evergreen forest with dense canopy cover a large biodiversity and are found in this climate. So then we have the tropical monsoon climate. So in tropical monsoon climate, it is mainly found over the Indian subcontinent, northeastern part of South America and northern Australia. So here the winter will be dry and the rainfall will mostly be in summer season. So then we have the tropical wet and dry climate. So in this tropical wet and dry climate, it occurs mainly north and south of AF type of climate, which is our tropical wet climate. And it borders with dry climate on the western part of the continent of CF or CW on the eastern part. So our CF is a dry winter and warm summer, and CW is also the same only, in which what will happen, the winter will be dry. So extensive AW climate is found to the north and south of the Amazon forest in Brazil and adjoining parts of Bolivia and Peru in South America, Sudan and also south of Central Africa. So these are the regions where it is found. So the annual rainfall in this climate is considerably less than that which is found in the tropical wet climate, and also the AM type of climates is AM climatic types is variable also, it will keep changing. Our AM is our tropical monsoon climate. So the wet season is shorter and the dry season is longer, with drought being more severe. So the temperature is also high throughout the year, and the diurnal ranges of temperature are the greatest in the dry season, the night and the day temperatures. So the deciduous forests and tree shaded grasslands occur in this climate. Then we have dry climates. So these dry climates, they are characterized by very low rainfall that is not adequate for the growth of plants. So these climates, they cover a very large area of the planet, which is extending over large latitudes from 15 degree to 60 degree north and south of the equator. Also at low latitudes from 15 degree to 30 degrees, what will happen, they occur in area of subtropical high, where the subsidence and the inversion of temperature will not produce any rainfall. So on the western margins of the continents, adjoining the cold currents which will come from the water bodies, particularly over the west coast of South America, they'll extend more towards the equator and also occur on the coastland. So in the middle latitudes from about 35 degrees to 60 degrees north and south of the equator, they'll be confined to the interior of the continents, where the maritime humid winds will not reach these areas, and they are often surrounded by mountains. So that will also be one reason why it won't receive much rainfall. So the dry climates are again divided into steppe or the semi-arid climate, which is denoted as BS, and desert climates, which will be BW. So they are further subdivided as subtropical steppe BSH and subtropical desert BWH. So at latitudes from 15 degrees to 35 degrees, and also the mid latitude, which is known as mid latitude steppe, is the BSK, and also the mid latitude desert, which is BWK. So you can see over here the BS and BW. For mid latitude steppe it will be BSK, and over here only the W will change for the desert. At latitudes, these will be found at latitudes between 35 degrees Celsius to 60 degrees Celsius. Sorry, not Celsius, 35 degrees to 60 degree latitudes. So the subtropical steppe and the subtropical desert climates. So these both these types of climate, they have common precipitation and temperature characteristics. So they are located in the transition zone, which will be between the humid, which receives a lot of rainfall, and the dry climates, which will not receive rainfall. Subtropical steppe will receive slightly more rainfall than the desert. That's why it's called as a subtropical, because it will receive at least minimum amount of rainfall, whereas the desert will not. So adequate enough for the growth of sparse grasslands. So then the rainfall in both the climates is highly variable. It's not constant. So the variability in the rainfall, it will affect the life in steppe as much as that in desert, which will cause famines all the time. So rain occurs in short, intense thunderstorms in deserts, and it is ineffective in building soil moisture, because very soon it will get heated up and again it will get evaporated. So fog is very common in coastal deserts bordering cold currents, and a maximum temperature. Why over here? Because number one is, we know that sand particles will carry the water droplets in the sky. So because of that, fog formation will be common over here, because it is near the cold currents. So because of that only, water droplets will flow. So maximum temperature in the summer is very high. The highest shade temperature of 58 degrees Celsius was recorded at El Azizia, which is in Libya, on 13 September 1922. So the annual and the diurnal ranges of temperature are also very high. Then we have the warm temperate, which is the mid latitude climates. So this is the type C. So these mid latitude climates, they'll extend from 30 degree to 50 degree latitude, mainly on the eastern and the western margins of the continents, and these climates will generally have warm summers with mild winters. So they are grouped in 4 categories. So humid subtropical, which will be dry in winter and hot in summer. Then we have the Mediterranean, which is CS. Then we have the humid subtropical. So here no dry season and mild winter. See, even though these two options are the same, but they mean different, because here we have CWA and here we have CFA, where what will happen? No dry season and only mild winter. Okay. Then we have the marine west coast climate. So first up we have the humid subtropical climate, CWA. So in this, what happens, it will occur more towards the poles and towards the poleward of Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn, mainly in North Indian plains and also in South China interior plains. So the climate is similar to AW climate, except that the temperature in winter is warm. So our AW climate is the AW is our tropical wet and dry climate. Again, because why? Over here what will happen? Because the winter will be warm. Then we have the Mediterranean climate. So as the name suggests, that Mediterranean climate, it occurs mostly around the Mediterranean Sea along the west coast of the continents in subtropical latitudes, which lie between the 30 degree to 40 degree latitudes. So examples are Central California, Central Chile. Then we have along the coast in southeastern and southwestern Australia. So these areas come under the influence of subtropical high in summer and westerly wind in the winter. So the climate over here, it is characterized by hot, dry summer and mild, rainy winter. So the monthly average temperature in summer will be around 25 degrees Celsius, and also in winter it will be below 10 degrees Celsius. So the annual precipitation, it will range between 35 to 90 centimeters. Then we have the humid subtropical climate. This is the CFA. So this climate will lie on the eastern parts of the continent in the subtropical latitudes. So in this region, what will happen, the air masses are generally unstable and they'll cause rainfall throughout the year. So we can find them in eastern United States of America, then southern and eastern China, southern Japan, northeastern Argentina, coastal South Africa, and also eastern coast of Australia. So the annual averages of precipitation vary from 75 to 150 centimeters. And the thunderstorms will occur in summer, and also there will be frontal precipitation in winter, which are common. So another name for our frontal precipitation or rainfall is cyclonic rainfall. So the mean monthly temperature in summer is around 27 degrees Celsius, and in winter it will vary from 5 to 12 degrees Celsius. So the daily range of temperature is small. Next we have the marine west coast climate. So this marine west coast climate is obviously located polewards from the Mediterranean climate on the west coast of the continents, because the name itself is telling the location, west coast. So the main areas are northwestern Europe, west coast of North America, north of California, southern Chile, then southeastern Australia and New Zealand. So due to the marine influence, the temperature is moderate in winter and it will be warmer than its latitude. So the mean temperature in summer months will go up to 15 to 20 degrees Celsius, and in winter it will be 4 to 10 degrees Celsius. So the annual and the day same. Over here also the temperature range are small. So precipitation will occur throughout the year because it is obviously near the coastal region. So precipitation varies greatly from 50 to 250 centimeters. So cold snow forest climates. So over here, cold snow forests, they largely occur in large continental area in the northern hemisphere between 40 degrees to 70 degrees north latitudes in Europe, Asia and North America. So there will be cold snow forest climates, which will be divided in two types. So one will be our cold climate with humid winter, presence of little rainfall, and we'll have cold climate with dry winter, no rainfall. So the severity of winter is more pronounced in the higher latitudes. First we have the cold climate with humid winters. So in this what will happen, it will mainly occur polewards of the marine west coast climate and the mid latitude steppe. I know all this is very confusing, but you'll have to try and keep in mind that which region has what type of climate. So the winters are cold and snowy. Obviously, as the name suggests, because it says cold snow forests, so the winters will be cold and snowy, and the frost-free season will be very short. The annual ranges of temperature will be large. So the weather changes are abrupt and short. So poleward, what will happen? The winter will start getting very severe. Next we have the cold climate with dry winters. So cold climate with dry winters, they will mainly occur over the northeastern Asia, and the development of pronounced winter, anticyclone and its weakening in summer sets in monsoon like reversal of wind in this region. So what will happen? Poleward, the summer temperature will be lower and winter temperatures are extremely low, with many locations which will experience below freezing point temperature up to 7 months in a year. So the precipitation will occur in summer, and the annual precipitation is low from 12 to 15 centimeters, which this is very low. So then we have the polar climates. So polar climates, they'll exist obviously polewards beyond 70-degree latitude, and they consist of two types. One is the tundra and one is the ice cap. So tundra climate mein what happens is, it is called like that after the type of vegetation which is grown over here, like mosin, lichens and all of that. We have already read all this, and flowering plants. So this is the region of permafrost, where the subsoil is permanently frozen with snow. So the short growing season and water logging support only low growing plants. Also during summer what will happen, the tundra region have a very long duration of the daylight. Then we have the ice cap climate. So the ice cap climate occurs over interiors of Greenland and Antarctica. So even in summer what will happen, the temperature will be below the freezing point. It will go in minus. So this area receives very little precipitation, and the snow and ice get accumulated, and the mounting pressure will cause the deformation of the ice sheets, and they'll start breaking. So they move as icebergs that float in Arctic and Antarctic waters. So the Plateau Station, Antarctica, 79 degrees south latitude, portray this type of climate. So these are the three regions. Then the final one is the highland climates. So in highland climates, they are mainly They are mainly influenced by the topography of that particular region. In high mountains, there will be large changes in mean temperature over short distances, and precipitation types also and the intensity also will vary spatially across highlands. So there is a vertical zonation of layering of climatic types with elevation. So we all know that with height the temperature keeps changing. So these are the climatic regions of the world. So you can take a screenshot of this. Tropical climate, subtropical climate, we have temperate climate, polar climate and the highland climates. So then we have climate change. So the type of climate that we experience now, it might be prevailing for over the last 10,000 years with minor and occasionally wide fluctuations. So the planet Earth, it has witnessed many variations in climate since the beginning, and geological records show that there has been alteration of glacial and interglacial periods. So the geomorphological features, especially in the higher altitudes and high latitudes, they'll exhibit traces of advances and retreats of the glaciers. So the sediments which will get deposited in glacial lakes, they also reveal the occurrence of warm and cold periods because of the melting down of the snow and ice caps. So the rings in the trees also provide clues about wet and dry periods. So also many historical records, they describe the unexpected changes or the vagaries in climates. All these evidences indicate that the change in climate is a natural and a continuous process. Also, India also has witnessed alternate wet and dry periods, and archaeological findings show that in Rajasthan desert, it experienced wet and cool climate around 8000 BC. So the period 3000 to 1000 BC had higher rainfall, and from about 2000 to 1700 BC, this region was the center of the Harappan civilization. So these dry conditions, they accentuated since then. It started from then. So in the geological past, what happened was the earth was warm. Somewhere around 500 to 300 million years ago, through the Cambrian, Ordovician and the Silurian periods. So during this Pleistocene epoch, the glacial and the interglacial period occurred. We have all read this in history, and the last major peak glacial period was about 18,000 years ago. So the present interglacial period started about 10,000 years ago. We all know this. So climate in the recent past. So there has been a lot of changes in climate over time, and the 90s decade of the last century, it witnessed extreme weather events that took place. So what happened was in 1990s, it recorded the warmest temperatures of the century and some of the worst floods around the world. So the worst devastating droughts in the Sahel region, as you can see in the picture, south of Sahara Desert from 1967 to 1977 is one such variability. Also during the 1930s, what happened was, in the southwestern Great Plains of the United States, there was a severe drought which occurred. So this was called as the Dust Bowl. So historical records of crop yield or crop failures, of floods and migration of people, they tell us about the effects of the changing climate. So a number of times Europe also witnessed warm and wet, cold and dry periods. Also the significant episodes were the warm and dry conditions in the 10th and 11th centuries when the Vikings settled in Greenland. So this is in Europe there was this little ice age also. So as I said, now Europe witnessed a little ice age from 1550 to about 1850. So from about 1885 to 1940, the world temperature showed an upward trend. It kept increasing. And after 1940, the rate of increase in temperature is slowed down. So causes of climate change. So the causes of climate change, they are obviously many, and they can be grouped into astronomical and terrestrial causes. So the astronomical causes are the changes in the solar output associated with the sunspot activities, mostly which take place in space and outside the earth. So these sunspots, they are dark and cooler patches on the sun which increase and decrease in a cyclic manner. And according to some meteorologists, what happens is when the number of sunspots will increase, cooler and wetter weather and greater storminess will occur. Also, a decrease in sunspot numbers is associated with warm and drier conditions. So they are not statistically significant. And also another astronomical theory is the Milankovitch oscillations. So they infer cycles in the variation in the Earth's orbital characteristics around the sun. So the wobbling of the Earth and the changes in the Earth's axial tilt. So all these alter the amount of insolation which is received by the sun, and which in turn might have a bearing on the climate. So all these are reasons why, the amount of insolation or the incoming solar radiation which is received from the sun, it will keep varying. So volcanism is considered another cause for climate change. Volcanic eruptions, it will throw up a lot of aerosols into the atmosphere. So these aerosols, they remain in the atmosphere for a very long period of time, which will reduce the sun's radiation reaching the Earth's surface. So after the recent Pinatubo and Elsion volcanic eruptions, the average temperature of the Earth, it fell to some extent for some years. So the most important anthropogenic effect on the climate is the increasing trend in the concentration of the greenhouse gases which are present in the atmosphere, and these are likely to cause and are causing global warming. So global warming, so mainly because of the presence of greenhouse gases, the atmosphere is behaving like a greenhouse. So the atmosphere, it also transmits the incoming solar radiation, but it will absorb the majority of the long wave radiation which is emitted upward by the Earth's surface. So these gases that absorb long wave radiation are called the greenhouse gases. So the processes that warm the atmosphere, they are often collectively referred as to the greenhouse effect. We'll read about it in the next slide. So the term greenhouse, it is derived from the analogy to a greenhouse which is used in cold areas for preserving heat. What will happen is, greenhouse effect is such, it will once it absorbs the heat, it will not emit it back or reflect it back. It will store that heat and keep that area warm. So a greenhouse is made up of glass. The glass, which is transparent to incoming short wave solar radiation, is opaque, which means it won't be transparent. You can't see through it. to the outgoing long wave radiation. So the glass, therefore, it will allow more radiation, and it will prevent the long wave radiation from escaping back outside the glass house. So this will cause the temperature inside the glass house to be warmer than the outside. So, for example, when you enter a car or a bus during summers where windows are closed, you will feel more hot. You'll sweat more. So it's the same scenario. So likewise, during winter, the vehicles with closed doors and windows remain warmer than the temperature outside. So this is another example of the greenhouse effect, how it happens. So the primary greenhouse gases of concern of today are mainly carbon dioxide, chlorofluorocarbons, methane, nitrous oxide, and the ozone. So some other gases such as the nitric oxide and the carbon monoxide, they easily react with the greenhouse gases, and they'll affect their concentration in the atmosphere. So the effectiveness of any greenhouse molecule, it will depend mainly upon the magnitude of the increase in its concentration. If it's too much in concentration, its lifetime in the atmosphere and the wavelength of the radiation that absorbs will also be more. So the chlorofluorocarbons are highly effective, and ozone, which will absorb all the ultraviolet radiation which comes from the sun in the stratosphere, it is very effective in absorbing terrestrial radiation when it is present in the lower troposphere. So one more important thing to be noted is that the more time the greenhouse gas molecules remains inside the atmosphere, the longer it will take for the Earth's atmospheric system to recover from any change brought about by the latter. So the largest concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere is carbon dioxide, and the emission of carbon dioxide comes mainly from fossil fuel combustions of oil, gas, and coal. So also forest and oceans are also the sinks for carbon dioxide. Forests will use obviously carbon dioxide in their growth. Plants use photosynthesis and release oxygen. That's why they tell we should grow more trees so that it will encourage more release of oxygen. So deforestation due to the changes in land use also increases the concentration of carbon dioxide. So the time taken for the atmospheric carbon dioxide to adjust to the changes in sources to sink is about 20 to 50 years. So it is rising at about 0.5% annually. So doubling of the concentration of CO2 over pre-industrial level is used as an index for estimating the changes which will occur in climate and in climatic models. So chlorofluorocarbons are products of human activity because they are released through the ACs and all of that, electronic gadgets. So mainly what happens is, in the stratosphere where ultraviolet rays will convert oxygen into ozone, this ultraviolet rays, they do not reach the earth's surface because of ozone. Ozone will protect us from these harmful rays. But the CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, which drift into the stratosphere, they'll destroy the ozone layer and try to create a hole. You can see this red hole over here. So because of that, what will happen? When it creates a hole in this ozone layer, that harmful ultraviolet rays will enter the earth. So large depletion of ozone layer will occur over Antarctica, and the depletion of ozone concentration in the stratosphere is called the ozone hole. So this allows the ultraviolet rays to pass through the troposphere, and also international efforts have been initiated for reducing the emission of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. So the most important is the Kyoto Protocol, which was proclaimed in 1997. So this protocol, it went into effect in 2005, which was ratified by 141 nations. So this protocol, it bounds the 35 industrialized countries to reduce their emissions by the year 2012 to 5% less than the levels which were prevalent in the year 1990. It will keep these certain targets. So the increasing trend in the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere may in long run, it will warm up the earth. So once the global warming will set in, it will be very difficult to reverse it because it takes a very long time to get rid of it. So the effect of global warming may not be uniform everywhere. In some places it can be very, very severe also. So what is happening is the adverse effect due to global warming, it is affecting the life supporting system also. So rise in the sea level due to melting of glaciers and ice caps, and also the thermal expansion of the sea, it may flood large parts of the coastal areas and islands, which will lead to many social problems. So this is one more serious concern, which is, uh, another serious cause for, another cause for serious concern for the world community. So efforts have been already initiated to control the emission of the greenhouse gases and to arrest the trend towards global warming. And one of the major concerns of the world today is global warming. So the temperature data which is available from the middle of the 19th century, mostly for Western Europe, it is the reference period from 1961 to 1990. So the temperature anomalies for the earlier and later periods, they are estimated from the average temperature for this particular period. So the annual average near surface air temperature of the world is approximately 14 degrees Celsius, and the time series will show that the anomalies of annual near surface temperatures over land from 1856-2000 relative to the period 1961 to 90 as normal for the globe. It will be normal for the globe, but what will happen? An increasing trend in the temperature was discernible in the 20th century. So in 20th century only there was a lot of debate and all that, and there has been a lot of rise in the past decade. So the greatest warming of the 20th century was during the two periods 1901 to 1944 and 1977 to 99. So over each of these two periods, the global temperature rose by about 0.4 degrees Celsius, and also in between there was some slight cooling and all of that, but this was marked in the northern hemisphere only. So the global average annual mean temperature at the end of 20th century was about 0.6 degrees above the recorded temperature which was at the end of 19th century. So the 7 warmest years during this time period was recorded in the last decade. So the year 1998 was the warmest year, and probably not only for the 20th century but also for the whole millennium. So that's all for today. I know the chapter is a little bit confusing and boring, but the problem is all this is theoretical. So we'll have to, have little knowledge about it and read about it very well. So I'll be back with the next chapter. Please make sure that you like and share this video. Also subscribe to our channel for more such videos, and also leave a one-line comment or a feedback in the comment section below. You can contact on this number, as I said earlier, for any queries and for enrollment details. You can also email us and visit our YouTube channel. So until next time, all the best and thank you.